Hello and welcome to my screencast for logo and brand identity for Worthwhile Studio. My name is Joy Poe and this is for my ENT 645 Entrepreneurial Marketing class. And in this screencast I'm going to go over the process that brought me to my logo design and also what I learned about my brand identity as I went through the process of designing this logo. So I began with two basic ideas. I had this fox here and the idea of using a palette. And I enjoyed my fox from the get-go. He's vintage, he's been a key figure in my blog, and he's been kind of a visual interest for me for Worthwhile Studio from the start. So he was kind of on the table as a mascot of sorts for Worthwhile Studio. And then I also wanted to be straightforward and attempt a logo that kind of directly told you what Worthwhile Studio does. So I decided I would use the palette. Because sometimes people think of studios as being a music studio or some place for recording. So Worthwhile Studio, I wanted to make sure it was associated with art. So I was also testing out the idea of using the palette, and then I added the clock and the color, and I like this logo, but I kept getting drawn back to my fox. So I decided I needed to explore him a little bit further because it felt more authentic to me and less cliche. So, and also just not as predictable. So here we go. We moved on to the fox and some things that I did along the way. I superimposed a clock behind him. I tried lots of different ways to kind of put him in different apps and just see what I could get creatively out of him. I kind of liked this melding of two pictures. And then I realized that, if I didn't put the clock behind him, I could circumscribe him in a circle and it would kind of feel like a clock without actually being one. So I decided I liked him in the circle. So that is kind of where I began with him, is putting him in a circle. And then I also looked up some metaphors and meanings for foxes. And now I understand why this felt more authentic to me after researching, these meanings and metaphors. So swift thinking, wise, adaptable, responsive, cunning and clever, observant, quick to action, bold, playful, frisky, active, sharp, alert, witty, creative, flexible, and agile. So many of these words you could use while describing an artist really working. So I really felt like in the end the fox felt more authentic than, say, the palette with the clock on the top. It just didn't feel quite like what I was trying to portray. And then also on my blog, my tagline is worth the time spent. Worthwhile Studio, worth the time spent. Kind of alluding to the definition of worthwhile. But I also thought about how the clock and time is a factor in Worthwhile Studio. And I kept always bringing up this idea, what time is it, Mr. Fox? And I would answer time to create. So I kind of changed the tagline to time to create for Worthwhile Studio. So when I went about designing and refining this, I spent considerable amount of time trying to quickly learn Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop to render my graphic ideas in a digital form, and failed epically at both of those. I kind of realized the limitations I have in technology. So I decided I'd need to hire a graphic designer for digitally rendering, or perhaps later on I could take a course in Adobe Essentials. But currently, what I did to remedy my design troubles was I returned to what I know best for rendering my visual ideas, and that is pencil and paper. So I started drawing. And I printed out a lot of circles, and then I printed out several foxes, and went about just putting the fox in different places in the circle, playing with the edges of him, leading over the edge of the circle. And then I also wrote in different ways where I would like the placement of the words. So I enjoyed this process. It was a lot more fun and really helped me connect a little bit more. So the final reveal here is we have Worthwhile Studio. The fox there is circumscribed. He's kind of coming out the bottom of the circle, maybe a bit like being in front of the moon or the clock face. I just like the way he's positioned. So I wanted a circular design because worthwhile is such a long word. It's really hard to put worthwhile next to studio, and it just kind of goes on for miles. So I really like the idea of it being in a circle. I like the offset design of the business name too, how, predictability, you would have the center worthwhile and then studio starting there. But I like that worthwhile kind of goes up and beyond, and the 1 o'clock kind of angle here is the start of studio. I actually prefer the hand-drawn logo to maybe a digital one in the end. I really liked the way the hash marks came out and stuff like that. So I think it also would help connect the client that this is an artistic business. So I may keep it as a hand-drawn logo other than adding in some typography. And I would add a signature color, and burnt orange comes to mind for me because of the color of a fox. But I would probably play with the color palette a little bit more. But here in this particular screencast, I've used a lot of the burnt orange just to see what it felt like to be with the black and the charcoal colors. And then again, I would refine the typography. It would be a font without serifs, which means the little feet that you would see. They would be an uppercase font, and they would have a wide letter base so that it would kind of spread through the circle really well and make it very readable. And then I may extend the tail because it kind of reminds me of the tip of a paintbrush. Or I may have the graphic designer add a couple of paintbrushes behind the left of the fox. And actually I've attached a couple paintbrushes right here. Come here, you. There we go. To kind of give you an idea of what it would look like there. And I like that it kind of fills up the white space here. And adds another element of what does this business do. And of course it would be hiding behind the chest there, but gives you an idea of what it would be to add a little bit more to that logo. And then I also kind of came up with a variation on the theme, like if I really did need something that was linear as opposed to circular, say in a Facebook ad or letterhead email, that kind of thing, I have this kind of variation. So the thumbnail sketch, the designer would superimpose the better drawing here, and then whatever font we would choose, worthwhile would be kind of compressed, and studio would be elongated, and then the tagline added there. So I did actually learn a little bit about myself as I was designing this and what I kind of foresaw as my business progressed, what I would want it to look like, both physically and graphically. So I start with the idea of a core message, and I would say the act of creating brings a sense of play, entertainment, experiential learning, and connection to others. And Worthwhile Studio teaches people how to let their inner artist out to play by offering quality instruction, a structured time, and an inspirational space to create. And then the purpose of my marketing would be to build an identity around attracting several types of creative women. And the purpose of the marketing would be to attract the clients that would become regular patrons, but also would be ambassadors for the brand that would tell people, we have great instruction, or we have a wonderful space, or you just have to try this because I love it so much. So we've designed our brand around building a uniquely supportive environment for women to learn, grow, and create. And then the physical identity, I don't really have a space in mind for Worthwhile Studio, but I imagine the setting being kind of timeless with kind of a vintage vibe to it. So there would be quality furniture that has a little bit of a flair to it. There would be a focus on buying handmade, upcycled, and local items for classes and studio decor. And the physical space would feel, again, classic and inviting and comfortable. Someplace you'd want to come in and sit down and just listen to someone talk about art, or have a cup of coffee with a friend while you're, taking a break from painting, that kind of thing. So I think about having, a lot of handmade, like aprons for painting classes, a handmade apron, those types of things. So small touches that would make people go, oh, someone touched this and made this. I like that idea. I think a lot of women are impressed and appreciative of handmade items. So again, then moving on to the graphic identity, which we've really gone through, but our identity revolves around circular, clean, and classic design. The fonts are large, wide, and easy to read. The shapes are classic. They're curvy, they're feminine, and then the design elements would be delicate yet playful, and then the color would be bright and cheerful, and it would also be discreet. It wouldn't be overflowing with color, it wouldn't be bursting. It just would be one color that really makes an impression. And then one fun thing I did along the way to kind of get a feel for what I wanted my brand to look like is I set up a bunch of keywords. So vintage, classic, comforting, clean and simple, circular and curvy, of course creative, frisky and playful, simple, inviting, quality, artistic, handmade, authentic, and feminine. So I think these, words really do a good job of summing up what I would want from a graphic design and from a brand identity. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed listening to my screencast. Thank you for watching. The end.